Right, so just moving off the world of IoT and starting to think a little bit more around typical cloud computing. Customers are starting to embrace multi-clouds. We know that. There's a lot of talk around public cloud. Organizations such as Amazon, it's a monster, Azure, another one. And obviously there are other public clouds that are starting to spring up all over the place. But then there's the private world. What customers are building in their own data centers. What customers are doing in terms of leveraging infrastructure at service providers. And all of these things create potential more complexity to organizations. But we do know that applications will not only live in a single state data center such as their own or in a public cloud. We're going to have multiple clouds. I don't know if you cast your mind back. I like these analogies in terms of the two-speed world, but if you cast your mind back in terms of Amadeus and the booking engine and sitting in front of a travel agent, making a booking, not quite understanding how they actually coded these things to actually give you your ticket, and then your dot matrix printer that used to print out the ticket and you used to put that in your pocket and hopefully you didn't lose it because you wouldn't be able to get onto your flight. Moving into the digital era where you actually have everything on your device. You need to check in because you want to make sure you've got that seat. You don't want to be sitting in the middle. You want to be sitting on the aisle. So you use your phone and you connect off the application and you download your boarding pass to your phone. That's a typical example of the two-speed world, where we've come from and where we're going to. But what are some of the complexities around cloud? So people talk about POPI, and POPI is becoming more prevalent in organizations. What are we doing? How do we comply in terms of governance? How do we protect the data? What are the users allowed to access inside my organization, and how am I tracking those users? Costs. Costs, cloud doesn't mean that your costs are going to come down as a pure compute layer. It could mean that you become more efficient. It could mean that because you can scale up and you can rent something on a monthly basis, you don't have to spend CapEx. So it's change, but cost doesn't mean that, or cloud doesn't mean that costs are going to necessarily come down, but you are going to optimize your organizations a little bit more effectively. Management. How am I managing my cloud? In the past, you'd have to rely on a technical individual to go and spin up workloads, install your applications. We're going to show you a little bit later in a demonstration how simple cloud actually is. Cloud needs to be about business. Yes, connecting people, but connecting people in a business mind and a business sense, so making it very easy for you as individuals. Security. How are we securing the information? And we're going to hear a little bit later from some of our panel guests around things like, as I said, the big data world, about security. What are they seeing and how they're managing that inside the worlds of South Africa and globally? And silos. Does anybody know what shadow IT is? So shadow IT, it's an interesting one. So I got my enterprise agreement and I gave my staff members some access to Azure. And last month, all of a sudden, I had this massive bill, but I wasn't able to control what that user was actually doing. But what they wanted to do was be able to spin up workloads in a public cloud because Azure gave them some specific capability that they couldn't get inside their own organization. But if you can't manage your users because they're working in a siloed approach, it's going to cause you potential cost issues and management of data because now your data is leaving your organization. We'll show you how effectively you can manage those users and move away from a shadow IT problem that you potentially could have in the future, or maybe you already have right now. So again, these are some of the key questions that you need to be asking yourselves and looking at inside your organizations. So let's talk about the hybrid world, because I firmly believe that hybrid will be probably 70 to 80% of the things that organizations will start doing. Not everything can live in the public cloud. Not everything can live inside your world. Things such as DevOps, being able to spin up workloads just for short periods of time. Each cloud, or infrastructure as a service from a cloud definition perspective, will give you different capabilities. You need to be able to leverage all of those things. So in a typical world, you have a customer that has on-site infrastructure, so his private cloud, and he has something sitting inside the data center, which is a hosted private cloud. He's running different workloads. As I said in the first session, organizations will find that applications are built more around cloud as we go forward, as opposed to worrying about whether my application will actually run on the cloud. We're still moving through that middle ground of where applications will run most effectively. So we have some applications. One, the beastie one, SQL. I see my colleagues sitting over there. That's the world of compute. That's the world of let's suck the resources and cause my CFO to get gray hair. But if we start managing those workloads a little bit more effectively, and then start looking at what organizations are doing in the service provider space in a multi-tenanted landscape, the management layer giving you that single pane of glass to be able to effectively spin up workloads in different instances, in different platforms, getting the best cost benefit for the right, the best cost benefit for the right type of application and for the right part of your strategy from an organization. That's what you need to start looking at. You need to understand what's in your world and how best to leverage it across multiple clouds. Service level agreements are not just about me standing here and saying, well, I'll give you 100% uptime. It's not about that. What are your SLAs back to your business? What are your SLAs and how do you bill each component of your organization? Maybe you want to fictitiously bill those people. They spin up workloads, you get service sprawl in the virtual world, but are you billing them back, whether you're actually getting money or not? It would be a great way to get visibility and control over those workloads and push it back from a business perspective into your organizations. So I'd like to call on my dear colleague, Mark. Mark Fairweather is the Managing Director of MDA Property Systems, and he will be taking us through a little bit about his journey in terms of the world of cloud.
Thanks, Rich. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to start with the bad news in that I'm not going to be making coffee or anything like that today, so there's nothing that flashy. But I thought what I'd do is just take you through a little bit of the journey that MDA has been on over the last 5 years. A little bit about us. We're the leading provider of property management software in South Africa. About 70% of the listed property funds in the JSE use our system to manage their portfolios, full financial system, and we're operating in about 19 countries at the moment with views to continue to grow that. We've been around for nearly 30 years, so we've also had some experience, and we've been through a number of evolutions as a business. We started as a MS-DOS-based system. We rewrote into a Windows form-based system using VB6, we upgraded to VB.NET, and we're at the start of our next journey moving towards the web. But really, about 5 years ago, we realized that as a business, the traditional way of selling our software and providing our software was changing, and we needed to change as well. We used to sell an annual license, you had your own infrastructure, you popped it on there, you installed it, and we left you alone for a year until we had to go and renew your license in a year's time. And we started making the change as a business towards software as a service about 5 years ago. So we started our own cloud environment where we would host the system for you, charge you on a monthly basis, and take care of all the admin. So it started very small. We started with about 50 to 100 users 5 years ago, and that started to build some momentum. But that was hosted in a physical data center on physical infrastructure, and every time we had a new client moving across, well, we had to go and order boxes, we had to get someone to go install them, we had to get them in there. It was a huge pain and a huge worry. So that brought us to the situation, as I mentioned there, scaling issues, big bumps in cost every time we needed to add infrastructure in there. But it brought us to the situation where we realized that we needed to adjust and change and get ready for scale. And that's when about a year ago we actually made a decision to move towards EOH Cloud Services as a new cloud provider. And so we started our migration across, which wasn't a simple thing. At that point in time, we had about 1,000 users in that environment. And we started with quite a slow phased approach in terms of getting over there, but due to risk, we were actually working with a pretty small one-man show vendor. At the end of the day, we got to a situation where, from a risk perspective, we decided to take a big plunge, and over one weekend, we moved the remainder of our clients. I think it was about 200 clients, across into the environment. So that Monday morning, we woke up with a huge spike. I think quite a few boxes started moving around in the background, and we had some fun to deal with. But ultimately, we got there. And what we've seen is that, some of the other challenges that we had, going back, was we also changed from a Citrix version 6 to Citrix version 7.5 during that upgrade. So we introduced some more complexities from our Citrix configuration. And we had this view that because we'd moved to this great cloud environment, we could actually just scale up. We could have 4 app servers. For those of you familiar with the Citrix setup, you're essentially hosting sessions on an app box. And we thought, with 1,000 users, we'll just bang up the RAM and CPU on these guys, and we'll be able to host 250 sessions in each box. It turns out we were wrong, not because of the boxes, but because of the Citrix side of things. Really, the ideal point there is sitting with around 50 users on a box. So overnight, we decided that we now need to scale outwards instead of up. And the beauty of being in an environment where instead of going out and buying a bunch of boxes, I think that week, Rich and the guys had some gray hairs because we started right-clicking, creating new workloads like it was going out of fashion, and we scaled from 4 app boxes to about 15 overnight. And that solved the issue for us, but it was a very exciting time. And I think that highlighted to us some of the benefit of being in an environment where we don't own that infrastructure, we don't manage it, and it's essentially virtual. So where we are today, I think we've matured our environment a huge amount over the last 5 years. We started with 50 to 100 users. I put this slide together probably about 3 weeks ago, and it was accurate at the time when we had 1,900 users in that environment. In the last 3 weeks, we've grown through 2,000 in that environment, so we're currently supporting 2,000 users in that environment. There's a huge amount of VMs in the background that are supporting that, but from our perspective, it's not a huge worry for us. We don't have to worry about any of that. We have the ability to provision on the fly. We've got the benefit of deep technical teams that can assist us with problem solving and just any challenges that we may have. So we've got expertise in the Citrix stack. We've got expertise in the VMware stack. And yeah, we don't have one person on standby on the weekends. So that's also a nice change. And really, I think the ongoing benefits is that we've been able to elevate where we're focusing as an organization. In the past, we were focused on the infrastructure, on the boxes. Are they running okay? Today, we can focus on our disaster recovery strategy. So making sure that our nightly replication of the entire environment is moving to a secondary data center, that we're testing that on a regular basis. That our backup retention policies are in place. We've got cost visibility, performance. We're getting down to the level of detail where us as an organization should be focusing rather than worrying about physical infrastructure. So it's been a great change and very exciting. So where to from here? I think that's a very quick snapshot of the last 5 years at MDA Property Systems. But I think for us as an organization, we've recognized the change that we've needed to make into software as a service provider as opposed to a traditional software provider. We're seeing a huge amount of growth. We're actively migrating all of our on-site clients into the cloud environment. So we've got a big push towards to doing that. What I didn't mention is we have about 4,500 users, 450 clients. So we're at 2,000 users in our cloud environment. It's about half of our user base. And on any given month, we're hopefully migrating 100 to 150 of our users across into our cloud environment. They're also seeing the benefit. I think it's been a bit of a challenge to convince some of them to move over, but more and more, like we've taken the decision to not necessarily own all of that infrastructure ourselves, they're also making the decision to say, this is where we need to be as organizations, focusing on our core business. So yeah, we're building for the future. We're focusing on scale and building our organization and our environment to not only handle the 4,500 users, but the 10,000, 20,000 that we're expecting to get to in the next couple of years. So that's where we're headed, and that's a quick overview of it. Thanks, Rich.
So I'd like my trusted CTO to come and help me here. So it's all good and well talking about cloud, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, but now we're going to take it down just to what that thing is, which is about business. So I'm not going to go through a lengthy demonstration. We're just going to touch on a couple of key areas in a live platform just so that you can see what hybrid cloud is actually. Because there's a lot of talk about hybrid cloud. Everybody talks about it, but not necessarily everybody's doing it. And potentially organizations don't understand what it could be for them. So we're going to give you a view of that. So can you click over to, right. Right, so Yapi is going to log into Cloud Manager. So Cloud Manager, as you saw in the presentation, is really that management layer that extends across your own infrastructure into a service provider's infrastructure, as well as into the public cloud world. So being able to give you a few things. One, control. So control over what your users are actually doing inside your organization. Number two, cost visibility. Whether it's fictitious cost building inside your organization or whether it's something into the public cloud, it gives you that cost visibility. Role-based approval. So being able to manage the user when he deploys his workload, it's going to come through to the CFO in order to get him to approve it. And then obviously, it's that single pane of glass. So it gives you the flexibility to move your applications or the desired place that you'd like to put the specific application as you wish. So there's just 3 areas that I want to touch on. The first is, if we look at building a server, this is the type of environment where you can see, right, we've got a couple of EOH capabilities, but if we look at environments, you can see AWS, you can see Azure, you can see Google, you can see HP Helion, and then you can see a couple of other environments. This is that single pane of glass to talk into all of those different data centers. Okay? It's not just about a management engine looking at my own world. It needs to be exposed out to everything. Okay? So Yapi, if you just click on an environment, also why I say this is a business tool is because technical people don't know how to slide bars up and down. They only know how to do command line things. So we have bars, and you can slide it up. It's very easy. But you can make it even easier. You can actually pre-templatize those so they are predefined. So even if a business person, like let's just say a project manager, would like to go and provision a workload for an SAP HR something, it can be pre-templatized and easy for them to go and select it. So again, you moving away. We're not saying move away from getting rid of your technical people. Please don't do that, because they'll come and massacre me. We need technical individuals, but we want to make it easy for business people as well. So build on an hourly basis, build on a monthly basis. It's that flexibility and the cost visibility. So if you just click out of that, Yapi. So the second thing I want to show you is about the resource handler world. Public cloud is not going away. We need to embrace it, number one. Number two, they've got some really cool stuff that we can use. Azure's got incredible platform capabilities in the SQL space and other applications. AWS, monster. They've got amazing things inside their world. But if you've ever been onto an Amazon website and tried to, onto the EC2 portal and tried to provision things, very complicated. Way too complicated for me. This here talks to roughly 13 different public cloud environments. So it's not one sock or one shoe or one shirt fits all. This is giving you multiple capabilities through multiple public clouds. So effectively, it's like a cloud brokerage engine, single pane of glass. The last thing I want to show you, see, my CTO talks a lot. He just moves the mouse around. It's about making those applications simple. So applications to a lot of people and a lot of organizations are quite scary. We know the technical resources in South Africa might not necessarily be readily available for us to use. So pre-templatization of those applications, whereby I can go in, I can deploy a SQL, I can deploy a Microsoft Dynamics environment, I can deploy a Hadoop environment, just by the click of a switch. Now, although this has got very much a public cloud type feel, we'll hear a little bit later from one of my colleagues, Paul, around some of the security world, it's very dedicated type security. We know that we want to be able to control that information, and we want to know what the users are doing inside your organizations. This type of stuff gives you that type of audit control and visibility. So as the introduction of POPI, or I think it's called GRSP overseas, when that comes in, these things organizations are asking, what are you doing to protect my data, and how do I know that no one else is going to be able to get it, and how do I know that my staff are not pushing their data out to somebody else?